Today's video is sponsored by Squarespace. Head to squarespace.com/saucestash and enter code SAUCESTASH to get 10% off of your first purchase. So I've made veggie bacon from just about everything. I've made bacon from mushrooms and soy skin. I've made bacon from rice paper and even banana peels. Now I thought that I discovered one of the best plant-based bacons when I made the daikon radish bacon. That was one of my favorite veggie bacons until I tried the store-bought all-vegetarian Inc. bacon. Now that bacon is mostly a Vital Wheat Gluten bacon. It's essentially a seitan bacon. Now I noticed a comment on my Ultimate Fakin' Bacon taste test video from my friend Nigel, who invited me over to the Seitan Appreciation Society Facebook group, where he made a seitan bacon which is currently going crazy viral over there. Thanks so much for sharing that with me. I love the technique that he does, so that inspired me to make my own, something similar. I'm gonna see if I can make it as good as his, but using my own recipe, doing my own little variation of his technique. I'm really excited to try this one, so let's get moving. Okay, so this is gonna go together pretty quick. Most of this recipe is gonna use textured vegetable protein, TVP. Okay, so sorry to interrupt the video, but I just sat down and I'm editing it, and I realized that from this point on in, that I say TVP. Now, there is actually no TVP in this recipe. There's no textured vegetable protein. I don't know what happened. What I'm using is Vital Wheat Gluten. Yeah, there's no TVP. I don't know why I kept saying TVP, but just ignore that. And every time I say TVP, imagine that I meant Vital Wheat Gluten. And then all of the flavors and spices, we have to overpower the gluten flavor with seasonings and spices. And then to make it like meaty and chewy, the meat texture, we're gonna use chickpeas. These are garbanzo beans, chickpeas, whatever you want. So I'm just gonna really quickly drain the chickpeas. Now I'm not gonna drain them and lose the liquid. We're gonna save this liquid because this is gonna be the water for this recipe. If you've never heard of it or used it before, the liquid from a can of chickpeas is called aquafaba. It's used in a lot of vegetarian and vegan cooking as like a binder and egg replacement. It whips up really well to make like a meringue. It's pretty wild what you could do with it. So we're gonna start this recipe in a blender. You could use a food processor. I'm gonna use my Blendtec with my twist jar. This just helps it kind of combine a lot easier, but that's how we're gonna start this recipe. But we're gonna use about 1 cup of the chickpeas. I would say almost the whole can, with about 1/2 of a cup of the aquafaba. So I'm gonna do 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1.5 teaspoons of smoked paprika. Now, if you picked up the mushroom seasoning from the mushroom seasoning video, we're gonna use about 1 tablespoon of mushroom seasoning. If you don't have the mushroom seasoning, I would recommend using like a vegetable stock or a fake chicken broth. That's gonna really help kind of bring up the saltiness and savoriness of the recipe. Now we're gonna do 1 tablespoon of sesame oil, about 1 teaspoon of Marmite, about 1/2 of a tablespoon of tomato paste, 1.5 teaspoons of liquid smoke, 1 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar, and 1 tablespoon of maple syrup. I'm gonna do about 1/2 tablespoon of maple syrup. Now all I'm gonna do is just put this jar on, and then I'm gonna pulse this until it is incredibly smooth. Yeah, that tastes like bacon. It even has kind of like a bacon smell to it. So at this point, I'm gonna add pretty much all of the contents from the blended mixture here. This is the flavor and the liquid for this recipe for the meat side of the bacon. Now we're gonna make the fat side separate to make it like a stripy bacon. So at this point, I'm gonna add about 1 cup of the TVP to the mixer with the paddle attachment. And then we're just gonna mix this up and let it kind of blend together. Fairly quickly, this starts to kind of form like a nice dough ball. So we're gonna let this just knead here in the bowl for about 5-10 minutes. I'm just gonna kind of take it out and just finish it by hand just for like another minute or two, just to get like a really nice smooth dough ball is what we're looking for here. Okay, so now at this point we have our nice dough ball here. I'm just gonna divide it in 2, and then we're gonna set this aside and let it rest. And then we're gonna make the fatty part for the bacon. So for this side, I'm just gonna do 1/2 of a cup of the TVP and about 1/2 of a cup of the remaining aquafaba liquid here. Now we don't have enough, so I'm just gonna add just a bit of water to fill up the remaining 1/2 of a cup. That's okay. Lock this up and mix it up. Now at this point, these guys have rested a bit, so what we're gonna do is try to stretch them out to be kind of flat and about the length of a bacon strip. Once you get the length down, then you could start pulling out wider to make it like a wider, thinner piece. Now, once you have that first layer, then just try to mimic it as best as you can with this other one here. This is a nice fat ball here, nice ball of gluten. Now, this is a heck of a lot softer. I'm gonna let this rest for just a minute, but I'm also gonna cut this one in half as well, so that way we get 2 layers here. So you can see how well this is going together. So essentially what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take this fat layer, spread it out to be about the same size here. Just kind of stretch it and pull it. If it tears, that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. And we're just gonna kind of pull it over our bottom layer and definitely push out any like air bubbles that you see, like really work this in. Because if there's air bubbles, that means there's gonna be air bubbles in the bacon itself, and that just doesn't really look right. Gonna drop this layer on top here, fitting it so that way it's about the same size, kind of pushing over the edge a little bit. Now let's do the same thing with this last stripe of the fat. And then we're gonna wrap this guy up, but before we wrap it up, I'm just gonna drop a little bit of salt on both sides of it and some black pepper. Bacon's normally cured in salt, so it's okay if it's a little salty. You gotta remember, all of this salt is gonna be evenly distributed when these are sliced into bacon-sized strips. And then all we have to do is just wrap it up. Now when we wrap it up, it's really gonna help us kind of square off the loaf and form it pretty tight together. And then there we go, there's our little bacon loaf package. So I'm gonna throw this in the freezer until it gets pretty firm. Helping it get firm, it's gonna help us slice really thin bacon slices. Right now, if I were to try to slice it, the fat would stick to the knife, it would be kind of gooey, it would be a mess. We wouldn't get actual slices. So this has been freezing for the last few hours. It's pretty hard, it's not frozen solid. So just so it doesn't thaw out, I'm just gonna use the plastic wrap here to kind of hold on to it so that way I'm not putting my fingers directly on it. And then we're gonna just make even thin slices. This first one looks pretty good. And then just do your best to get as thin as slices as you can get. This looks awesome. But these strips are looking awesome, exactly like what I want. I'm gonna go ahead and just throw this loaf back in the freezer. Now I'm just gonna heat a skillet on about a medium heat with about 1/2 tablespoon of vegetable oil. We're gonna throw this bacon in, probably just a few strips at a time. This is gonna be so good. Oil should be good to go. Look at that, look at it, ah! Now I will say that this, because it's like gluten, it puffs up when it cooks. There is a definite bacon smell happening. And I do believe the thinner that you can get them, the better off you're gonna be. This one's pretty like almost transparent. So I think this one's gonna come out really well. And if you did cut out like a thicker piece, don't feel bad to just kind of roll it out a little bit, see if you can get it a little thinner. I mean, this is still cooking, but I mean, seriously, just look at this. Look at this. That's amazing. This is amazing. So this is it, the seitan bacon. It has a nice crisp to it. It also has like a fatty spot. It tastes like bacon. Wow, wow, hold on. That's unbelievable. That is unbelievable. This is the best bacon I've made. This is by far the best bacon I've ever made. But definitely the thinner you get it, the better it's gonna be. If it gets too thick, then it gets a little bread-like. This is better than the daikon bacon. This is the king of plant-based bacons. This has taken the plant-based bacon to the next level. So gang, I wanna make sure I thank Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Head over to squarespace.com, but when you're ready to launch your website, go to squarespace.com/saucestash and enter code SAUCESTASH to get 10% off of your first order. If you haven't yet, make sure you click the subscribe button and click this video right here. It's gonna be more of my bacon videos.